Hello, everybody. Today, let us talk about, and this class is for BVA TT and BVA BI, and everybody can be advantaged by listening to this audio. It will definitely help. Okay. Today, we are going to talk about organizational culture and communication. That is the topic. Um, I tell in the class most of the times, you have to try to dissect the topic itself. So it is this topic has to do something with organization and the culture that exists within the organization, right? And both of the things which are related to communication. So this is the whole picture of this chapter. In this chapter, we in this chapter, the writers of the chapter of this book, they have brought some definitions of organizational cultures. They have compared things, and they have tried to relate it to the communication and culture also. Okay, so uh, this is the thing here. In the past we talked about organization, or no, in the past we always talked about international communication, right? Intercultural communication, the communication that exists within the boundaries and things like that. This time it is about organizational culture, right, and communication. Most of the time, as the time is proceeding towards towards the 21st century, and more than that, people started in this capitalist mode of production, in this capitalism setup. People started working in an organization, and organization has become people's thickly integral part of life, right? Everybody, they go to work for like 8 hours a day. We sleep for maybe 5 to 6 to 8 hours a day, which means we don't spend a good deal of time at home, but we spend good deal of time in organization, right? And it is like a little world there. So the writers say that, and it is a generally agreed thing that the culture can be decoded, culture can be understood from communication, from the way people talk, right? If we listen to what people talk, how people talk, right, we can understand their internal culture. We can understand their culture and subcultural values that they believe in. Okay, and also the other thing is once we once we listen to what they say, um, if we investigate, and if we scrutinize, examine thoroughly what they say, we can know like 90% of the time we can know about their culture and everything. So that is what it is saying. Okay. uh, yeah, that is what it is saying. Now the other thing is, even from the everywhere culture is there. Okay, so like McLuhan, about media, like McLuhan said, media is a message. Okay, here they don't, I mean, these writers don't say that, but I think I can very nearly say communication is culture. Almost tentatively, communication is culture, right? That is what I say. Because there are so many forms of communication, and from communication, how people communicate, how people react to certain things, right? What are people's stereotypes, and what are people's attitudes, beliefs, and artifact things, right? From all these, you can draw a picture of people culture tentatively, yeah. So from this we can deduce that communication is a culture, right? That is what this chapter is talking about. That is what these writers are talking about. Now, those are the things. So, the objectives of this chapter is what we mean by organizational culture and why is it important, right? So, this chapter is, I mean, communication. This subject is not quantifiable. By this I mean that you don't have like a step-by-step process to writing answer. We all are ambassador of this course, so we can write in our own way. We can explain it out in our own way if we have understood things. Okay, and you have to believe that you have understood things. So yeah, simply what is what we mean by organizational culture. In first paragraph, you just write what culture is in general, right? And how does that culture? How do you become specific about organizational culture? The culture that takes place in organization is organizational culture, as a matter of fact, and this culture can be decoded, can be understood, can be comprehended by communication, right? In two folds. First, we perceive, we assess people's communication as like a storytelling. We just listen to people's communication first, right? We observe people first. We observe, like now, verbal communication, non-verbal communication, all forms of communication we observe. After that, we deduce things, okay, and we allocate into different cultural groups or subcultural groups. So that is how we know. That is how we know people's culture and organizational culture also. For example, let me make you very clear here. Okay, if you think vigorously and if you examine thoroughly, if you scrutinize the process, whoever, like people working in UN can be differentiated from people working in a Montessori school, or people working for Red Cross can be differentiated from that of people working for World Bank. These are the organizational culture. Every organization has their own culture. Okay, if you work for any religious organization, it has its own culture, right? So now organization has its own culture. That is what it is saying. And you just come up with some example. Every questions you attempt, you have to defend with some examples. You have to give some examples. That is like illustrations, right? You have to do those things. Now explain and compare major models of organizational communication. So in this chapter, every chapter we have we have some models, right, of organizational culture. And we talk about three major models of organizational culture. In the next slide, I will talk about that. And the other thing is, so how organizational culture is communicated and expressed through a simple objective you have in this chapter, you have to understand. Okay, so the keywords so far is organization, communication, culture, right? And some models are here. There are thousands of models, but this the writers they bring like three models just to clarify. For example, in your exam, when you write some, when you explain some questions, you have to give exam, right? You have to give example. Sorry, no exam. You have to give example. Similar applies to this book also. When he wrote this book, when they wrote this book, two writers, right? When they wrote this book, they they had to provide some illustrations, some proof, some examples. So that is, they provided some models. And don't be carried away by don't block yourself, and don't think it is complicated. It is what it is. They just they just came up with the model that they thought to be, and it was approved. So it is, yeah, it is there. So okay, so the other thing is, what is organizational culture? That is what it talks about. Now we know organizational culture in a way. You can just go through this through the book. We will talk about it. All right. And now here is one exercise. Analyze the characteristics of a meeting room in your organization. Or yes, I told you previously, even from the setup of empty room, you can decode culture, right? How is it set up? If it is set up in a round table, then you might say that okay, it is more user friendly and the environment is very close, right? It's a open conversation, right? And maybe if they are set up, if there are cheer for every people, every participant, and if there is a gap, then you might tell it is a little closed conversation. The interaction is very less. You can say that from culture, right? And from that culture you can tell, maybe if it is round table, if it is the setup is like that, then maybe it's from your west people, like, because most of the things are based on interactions there. If it is from if it is like individual setup, then you can say maybe it is from Asia, or things like that. I'm not trying to tell one is good over other, but it is what it is, right? Maybe it is a closed conversation, right? Maybe in the place where you have individual setup, you have to be very shy with your boss, right? You have to respect your boss, you have to bow down your boss, and things like that. Okay, if you have some in some setup, if you have little pamphlets and maybe little posters, right? Maybe you have a little coffee on the side accompanied by cookies, right? Then it is a semi-formal kind of setup. So you have your own, you are a little easy in that, right? Imagine in army culture, they have a room setup, right? And from the room itself you can tell, oh, it's a very tough. You can sense things, if it is tough, if it is less tough. So that is what it is telling. You just have to think. You don't expect your mentor to tell everything, but you just think this way. As of now, whatever I'm saying is not there in the book. I'm thinking also, right? So you have to open up. You have to open up that inner space, and you have to think, right? That is so. Analyze the characteristics of a meeting room in your organization, or an organization you know well. Okay, how is the room organized and decorated? You can also give example of your classroom. Okay, what does the layout suggest about the way business is done in the room? Compare your perceptions with those of a friend or colleague. How far do you agree on what the room means? So this is a research kind of analyzing kind of thing. You can do that on your own. Okay, so levels of organizational culture. We'll talk about it in the slide in part 2. Okay, so okay, now let's stop this here. I hope you understood at least the basic introduction of this chapter. Once this is done, we will in part 2 we will go and discuss in the slides. All right, thank you so much.